Hi, YouTube world. I'm coming back again. This is like the second video I film in the day, and I think I have some explaining to do as to why that is. I meant to film today just one video, and it was supposed to be a chatty get ready with me talking about 9/11, and today is 9/11. And I tried to film a video. I thought it would be like very cathartic for me. And I don't know, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like natural or anything. So instead I just did a video about what makeup I put on for the day and kind of left it at that. But later on in the day, I just realized that I don't know, I was really reflecting on the day and I saw some memorial service on TV and it just really brought a lot of memories back. And so, I don't know, I decided to give this another shot. And instead, what would probably feel more natural, maybe it's because I'll be rubbing stuff off my face and doing a nighttime routine, which feels a little more healing or like I'm taking care of myself, it would make sense to do a kind of a unget ready with me or get unready with me chatty video, and to just sort of talk about my experiences and specifically my experiences on 9/11 and sort of the months afterwards. And I'm reflecting on it now more than ever, simply because I just felt like being in New York at that time, and in particular that day and the days following, the months following, it just felt like a very unique experience. It felt like everyone was really kind to each other in spite of having differences and being from different backgrounds. We were caring for each other. Even if we were being sardined in subways and being told, you know, there's a suspicious package, everyone get off, and for hours on end you would be stuck on a platform. And instead of getting angry with the system or at each other, we just sort of held each other in some way. And I don't know, I miss that. I miss that that feeling of being unified, of being in pain, even if it was pain, it was a unified pain. And I don't know, talking to my sister and hearing her, and she was very upset too, just kind of reflecting on it. And she brought up a good point, like right now so much of us are in pain on a much broader scale than 9/11, and there just aren't as many, there's not a feeling of like a unified force. It feels like something like this, like COVID, what's been happening is really being politicized, and it shouldn't be. It's touched so many people. It's touched me. I lost someone I really cared about who was too young to die in late March. And I have a friend who lost her brother, again, too young to die, and yet it happened. And there are so many others that had that same experience. And so I just thought it might make sense to just, again, another way to get to know me. It's a little sad way to get to know me, but I think sadness is part of life, and grieving is part of life, and it's part of being connected to everything, to the universe, to each other, to everything. So on September 11th, 2001, I actually was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I lived really far out in Brooklyn, and I had to commute into work into Midtown, which is a pretty far commute. It took well over an hour and 15 minutes on a train to get in. And I had just started this job. I started the job 7 days before. And in fact, my first week of training for the job, I was down at the World Financial Center, which was the adjacent buildings to the World Trade Center. in downtown Manhattan. Um, it was a beautiful morning. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say that, but it really was like a beautiful first fall morning, crystal blue skies, beautiful, just beautiful weather. What will end up being like really eerily beautiful weather. And I think we just, well, I should say I'm not an early bird when it comes to like getting to work on time. It's not my forte. I will work until the wee hours of the morning, but I am a true night owl, and working early, even if it's a 9 o'clock start time, it's really hard for me. So I often will come in at 9:15. I'm one of those people. You still want to work with me though, because I will burn the midnight oil and like go far beyond the dumb 15 minutes that I'm late. So I was running a little late, not great, because it was my second day in my actual location that I was going to be working, and I was really mindful of that. But the trains were running really, really slow, and eventually we found out that there had been an accident at the World Trade Center. So this was before 9 o'clock, and they had redirected all the trains. So my train had to be redirected over the Manhattan Bridge instead of going underground, under the river. And prior to, I guess the one thing I will say is prior to joining the job that I had joined, I had worked for 4 months as a HR consultant on the 104th floor for a company who actually extended an offer to have me join full time, but unfortunately it was just shy of what I needed to make salary wise, and I took another job at another company. I should say that I really, though, loved working for that company. I loved the people that worked there. They were so good to me. I had a great time working for them. I learned so much, and I just only experienced kindness and goodness from all of those people. They took me in like I was one of their own, and companies sometimes don't do that for consultants. Consultants sometimes feel very temporary, and they kind of sometimes use you like a stapler. You're a useful thing, but they're not going to really invest love into you. But that wasn't the case with this group, and it really bothered me that I couldn't stay there, that I felt very selfish taking the other offer because I already cared about them. But I made this decision. It felt like a very adult decision, and I was still in contact with them. So I think that's important to know about the morning. So we make it over the Manhattan Bridge. Our train gets parked right in the center of the Manhattan Bridge, where you have a clear view of the World Trade Center from one side of the train, and we could see there was smoke, and some people were wondering, it was probably a terrible accident that occurred that was destined to happen. We thought it was a small commuter plane or a helicopter. Like that seemed like a reasonable explanation to us, though they weren't giving us more information. And the internet, none of us had smartphones. No phone was smart. There was no way for us to access information. And so we just patiently waited, and while we waited and waited and waited and our train did not move, someone noted that they saw like a big bird in the sky, like an unreasonably large, like eagle bird. And in my memory, I remember like ducking down and looking through the window and seeing like the shape of it at the edge of a wing. And sure, someone said a bird. It sort of looked like that could be a bird. The perspective was so off from those buildings when you were down on the floor. You can't conceptualize how small things are or large things are. It was a really weird feeling. I remember working on the 104th floor, not even being able to look out of a window because it was really, I kind of felt like I would get vertigo, that sensation, because things just, I couldn't piece it together in my mind when I could see people on the street and that those were people. It's very weird. So I thought it was normal, like, okay, there's some bird in the sky, and then suddenly we see smoke, more smoke, and it occurs to someone, or they at least say it aloud, that this is not an accident, that that bird was actually another plane, and that we're under attack. And at this moment, I think I remember standing against the subway, the door. The train was very, very packed, and the girl next to me slowly collapsed. Like she sort of like slid down against the wall, like against the door, like a puddle, and she started sort of hyperventilating, and she started to say that her sister worked at the Trade Center, and she didn't know which tower, she didn't know which direction if she's looking at it. So I sat down on the floor with her, and someone gave us a bottle of water, and I gave it to her, and I just talked to her and calmed her down and told her to relax, that maybe if the accident happened in the first tower, that they told all the other people to leave to be safe, and that maybe she was okay. And I have a sister, so I could feel like her pain of just this worry, and I felt like responsible for her in a way. And right then and there, the train started moving, and I think the first place we stopped, actually, I think we bypassed some stops, and we actually ended up stopping first at 14th Street. And I remember her getting off and just me wishing her well. But I remember also being really stoic, like I couldn't feel. And I just felt like I had to reach safety in some way. And specifically, I had to call my family and let them know that I no longer was working. I mean, some people, my parents, my sister knew that I wasn't working at the 104th floor anymore. But a lot of people still thought I was, because my job was new, and it was like that whirlwind of changing jobs. And I don't know, you don't always update people, and Facebook wasn't a thing, and you had to put in a lot of effort into like catching people. So needless to say, I arrive at work. It's a completely foreign environment to me. I've known these people for one day. My boss isn't even there. He's stuck in another country, and then he won't even be allowed back into the country for more than a week and a half, because that's what happened after 9/11. So I really just don't know anybody, and I get in contact with my family. Thankfully, they disseminate the information to my extended family to know everybody's okay. I try my hardest to get on the phone with my boyfriend, who I'm living with, who is now my husband. He worked sort of like a second shift where he started at 11, 12, and I knew he would still probably be asleep or just getting ready, and he wasn't in the habit of turning on the TV or checking, and he actually worked down right by the World Trade Center on Rector Street, and I just wanted to stop him from commuting. And so I finally get in contact with him. Takes me a bit. The phones are down. I keep just trying to reach people to stop them from coming into the city, friends, anybody that I can. And ultimately, I end up watching the towers fall from the trading floor of this financial firm on these monitors. It was a surreal experience. I couldn't cry. I couldn't do anything. I was just in shock, and I just wanted to go home. I just remember, like, when is it okay to go home, to try to get home? Like, I don't want to be here in the middle of the city by myself. I was I guess a little over a year living in New York City. I was still very young. I was 20. I was going to turn 23, and I just wanted to go home. And of course, the effort to go home that day. No trains were running. Then limited trains. Then walking. Then hitchhiking. I actually don't even recall how I got home. that day. I made it to some place in Brooklyn. I walked a lot. I eventually made it home. I was just in disbelief. Like all those days, they were just a blur. They were a dark, dark blur. And I remember it just being extremely also painful for my husband, who had grown up. He's a native New Yorker. He had grown up his whole life, basically, for the most part, in the village in Tribeca before it was cool and safe and wonderful. He was there in New York at that time, and so his grandmother lived right next to the World Trade Center. And then that settled in, like, now I have to worry about my boyfriend, his family, taking care of him, still taking care of myself, and figuring out what this all means for me. And then it dawned on me right when I got home that I had all of these friends who worked in the 104th floor. And I remember that New York had set up, there was an emergency line where you would call in and spell someone's name with the numbers, and you had to spell it correctly, and you could only call once. Either it was like you call once and you could do up to 3 names, or just each call was only 1 name, but basically the call was to figure out if that person had registered their safety. And I remember writing everyone's name down and like figuring out, like, did I spell it correctly? Are they using Nicole and or Nikki, and like just trying to figure out, like, am I getting their spelling right? And I wasn't getting any hits on anyone registering safety. And so I thought, and especially after all the news, and the company was listed as a company who lost hundreds of people, I thought I had lost all of these friends, and I couldn't even like check. And I had to keep like showing up to this new job, which was insane because by this time, all our people from our World Financial Center office, all those windows were blown in. So all those people were moved into our smaller offices in Midtown, and we had to share a cubicle, like 5 people per cubicle, 5 people per 1 computer, per 1 phone, and we would cycle with one another. And I just remember I didn't know anybody, and I just remember it being really just unbearable, just the amount of sadness and anxiety, and you didn't know what to say to people who had lost people. The city was in chaos. Like I mentioned, you get kicked off of trains. You were paranoid. Then started the is anthrax in the mail. It was a lot. And I just remember, like I was in HR, and so our job was obviously to help our people. And one of the things we did was sort of like run these anonymous therapy sessions at another location. It was at a hotel across the street. And it was sort of like a place where you could drop in at any moment and go to these, like every hour on the hour, a new session would start. And it was just like these really beautiful, powerful venting sessions. And it just gave people a reprieve. And if someone had to stay there all day long, they could do that. And I actually thought, and now I'm reflecting on it, and I'm like, that was so progressive of us to have done. It was 2000, or 2001. No one was doing stuff like this. No one was talking about therapy the way they talk about therapy now, or it wasn't as accessible. And I still just remember the energy of the place. It was just so, as you can imagine, full of depression and anxiety and fear, and it was palpable. Like you could walk and your skin crawled and you didn't know why. And I remember telling my mom, just like, I can't really escape this sadness, and I'm always sad, and I come home and I'm sad, and my husband is sad, or my boyfriend at the time, I didn't know what to do. And I remember my mom saying to me, that sometimes the best thing you can do is just sort of walk away for a little bit and take some time to yourself, and that's okay. And she gave me the great advice. She said, you know, when I'm sad and I want to walk away from work, I take lunch to myself and I will go to an Irish pub. And I was like, well, I don't really want to like drink in the middle of the day. And she's like, no, I go to an Irish pub because they have really good home cooked food. And in the middle of the day, no one's going to bother you there. You're like, there's nobody there. And it's quiet and no one asks you what's going on. No one will talk to you unless you want to be spoken to. And you could take a book and have a nice like home cooked meal and something warm, and you'll feel better. And I remember thinking that was like some of the best advice my mom has given me. Okay. And I mean, who knew? This is my mom, like a Colombian mom, and she's like, go to the Irish. So I was like, okay, I'm going to the Irish. There's plenty of Irish pubs in New York City, especially in Midtown. So I took a book, and I remember it was like a Wednesday, and I had been already a few weeks out, and I went down on like Lexington and like 45th Street, between 45th and 46th. There was a pub, I don't even know what it was called, and it was a really bright sunny day that day. And I remember you know, there were a few pubs to choose from, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna go with this one. The first one I see, I don't want to waste time. I had like an hour, maybe I could squeeze out in 15 minutes, an extra 15 minutes for lunch. And I don't know if this has happened to you, but when you are like, it's very bright and sunny outside, and then you're gonna go into a bar and it's in the middle of the day, and you open the door and it takes a moment for your eyes to acclimate. So for a second, all you see is like black, sheer darkness. You don't even know what you're walking into. And that happened to me, and it was really startling because I realized I hadn't really been in a really dark place in a long time. Emotionally dark, yes, but not physically dark. And I remember opening the door and standing there to get my bearings because I didn't know if there was like a step up or down or whatever. And I suddenly heard my name being screamed by like a choir of voices. And when my eyes adjusted, it was all my coworkers from the 104th floor of that company that I worked at. And they were all day drinking in Midtown in this random bar. And there's dozens of bars in Manhattan. I mean, hundreds. And the company had given them a temporary space in Midtown, and they were all traumatized. They couldn't work. They had lost hundreds of people. And they were coping. They were doing the best they can. They were drinking in the middle of the day, and they hugged me and we cried. And I don't know. They told me everybody who had passed, they had recalled like meetings I was in and saying, oh, remember her? She was pregnant and she didn't make it. And they told me about that day. They told me why they survived. It was the pig-headedness of the administrative assistant of the group who insisted that they leave. They were in the second tower, that they leave. They go downstairs for a cup of coffee because they heard about this emergency. And although the announcement told them in the concourse area to go back up to their office, she just said no. And she told her whole group, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to actually cross the street and we're just going to sit and watch. And once we think it's safe, and I'll let you know when that is, we'll go up. And she literally like saved their lives. And I just it was just an incredible moment, and it was an incredible feeling to be reconciled with people that you really cared for, and that, you know, I was given this gift to know that they were all okay. And yeah, it was just a beautiful, um, beautiful moment to like very, very horrific events. And so, yeah, I, since then, I actually, I'm not in too much contact with any of them. I should, you know, I'm going to seek them out now. It's so much easier. It was so hard back then to stay in contact, but, it was just an amazing, amazing experience. Um, and yeah, and I think every year after, it was very hard for me even to walk through that area in downtown. I didn't do it for almost close to, I think, 8 years. And when I finally did, I got hired at yet another firm, and this one overlooked the construction of the memorial, the World Trade Center Memorial. And it was beautiful to watch it being constructed, these waterfalls, but I still wouldn't go to actually see them. I don't know, it just felt very, very painful, very painful. And I felt very protective of the people that actually lost people that day. And eventually I did go to the memorial, and it was quite beautiful, and I went with my sister, and yeah, it was really powerful and beautiful. But anyhow, I just thought I'd share. I think it's a big part of my story as a person, my gaining perspective in life, by having that experience. You see, it's still like raw within me. It will always be raw. But I think that's important. I think we deserve to remember that we are capable of having that feeling, the capacity to care and love that way, the capacity to fear, to heal, to let time give us perspective. And so on today, it was just something I felt like I needed to share as I embark on this journey of YouTube and sharing with others, and, you know, not being so isolated, especially during this pandemic. And yeah, my heart goes out to everyone who's hurting right now, everyone who hurt back then, and yeah, you'll be okay eventually. But yeah, this was a get unready with me as I wipe my face clean and just put a simple oil, and with some aromatherapy that calms me down. And I already feel a little better. So thank you for listening. If you've been listening, if not, it's okay. Yeah. Bye, everyone.